Welcome back, Streamer Nation. I'm your host, Michael Simeon, and you're listening to the SP Streamer Podcast, which is part of the Fantrax and FantraxHQ.com family. Let's bring in my wonderful co-host, Lauren. What's going on, Lauren?
Not much, Michael. I'm just, we're pushed back a little bit today. We've got a West Coast guest who I'm really looking forward to speaking with. And for the record, when I say I want to stay awake, I'm looking forward to talking to him, and I would record at any hour for him. So just to make that clear.
Debatable.
If I'd known that, I would have scheduled a midnight your time.
That is definitely debatable.
Yeah.
And I told Lauren, I said, this is the last West Coast person we were booking for a while.
It's true.
Because we just had Vlad Sedler on last week, and that was a 10 p.m. one also.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Even though he spoke, let's introduce him. Our guest today is the founder of the most popular contest in baseball, TGFBI. He is passion that ruined this right. All right. He is the co-host of the Sleeper in the Bus podcast. He's a writer for Rotographs, but most importantly, he's a model for RotoWear. Our guest is Justin Mason. What's up, Justin?
How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
I when I was pouring my tea, the first thing that popped in my head for some reason was, why doesn't Justin have a mug? Or do you have a mug and I don't know about it?
I don't, because I don't drink coffee or tea. So
that doesn't mean other people don't want it.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't mean you have to put coffee or tea.
Like I could be sipping this with your face on it right now.
This is true. Maybe I need to talk to Kenny and see if I don't know that he does. He has a pillow for me. There's a Justin Mason face pillow that you can get. There's also a woman's bathing suit and a basketball jersey that's like $5,000 for some reason.
So we all know about the bathing suit.
Yeah, and most of you seen me wear it, unfortunately for you. So I gave my wife the pillow as a push present on our last child. That did not go over well.
I wonder why.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny, actually. Just so both I will be constantly refreshing my Twitter as we do this, just in case something happens. Right. Justin, what do you think? You think it's done tonight or tomorrow?
I no, I don't. I think that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was probably the most optimistic person in the industry until last week, and I really felt like they were going to get it done. I felt like it could get done quickly. They put together the 2020 season in a course of 2 days. They kind of know exactly where they need to meet in the middle to get this done. The problem is the owners have not moved at all, and I just don't know that the owners feel incentivized to move, and which is unfortunate because there's nothing worse for baseball than 30 owners who hate the game of baseball.
Go figure.
I don't think it gets done tonight, which is super unfortunate because I'm going to be in Vegas in a few weeks for the NFBC drafts that are going to get canceled.
Well, it sounds like a lot of people are saying within the last hour that the latest, it sounds like that they've come very close to.
We heard that last week, though.
You're right. We did,
and
then it blew up. That's kind of what I said to Lauren too.
Yeah,
I guess I'm getting my hopes up.
Yeah, the owners leaked all these stories about them being close, so that way when the players ultimately rejected the awful deal they offered them, they were able to be like, oh, look, it's not us. Everybody, I mean, the nice thing about social media in this has been that for the first time, the players have been able to get their side of the story out, whereas in 94 and in previous years, the owners were the only ones getting to tell their story to the press in a way that was, transpired, and players having direct access to the fans, I think, have turned the tide a little bit. I hope that means the owners at some point come around and go, they're losing the PR war, because they just have been atrocious in that. But I
don't know if they care, though.
I mean, the thing is, too, though, they might actually not be losing the PR war, because someone in our Discord chat actually said that he spoke to his friend who's just a casual fan, and he's only seen or heard about it from MLB Network or ESPN, and he's like, how can anyone side with the players? It doesn't make sense but that's, if the casual fans watching that, and like ESPN really only aired, the owner side of everything. So like, that's how you're going to think it's the player's fault.
The hard part, even if like you listen to the radio, most major sports talk radios have deals with their local teams.
Yeah.
And so like out here in San Francisco, we have KNBR, but KNBR has an agreement with the Giants. Like they don't want to jeopardize that. And so they're not going to speak out against the ownership because they don't want to risk, the Giants saying, well, you can't host the games anymore. So it's unfortunate that, there are probably more people than there should be that are rooting for the owners. And at the same time, like, players come and go and teams don't. And so I can understand why fans, especially kind of generic, fans, have these allegiance to these teams, and therefore the ownership over players who might sign with a different team or be traded to a different team at some point anyways. But I think those of us who know any better, like, understand the players are, only 38% of players are millionaires or making $1 million or more. Like, it's not this whole millionaires versus billionaires is BS. It's not the case.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to TGFBI, which I mentioned in your intro. First question, real quick. Lauren, are you finished with your draft?
I am not. We are in the 27th round, so we're almost there.
What about you, Justin?
I finished right after you guys did.
Yes, I finished.
You guys were easily the fastest draft. We almost caught you though. You guys slowed down in the last 10 rounds, and we almost caught you. I think we finished about 3 or 4 hours after you guys finished. Wow. My draft is always one of the faster drafts because I think people are just afraid of
you kicking them out if they're too slow.
Yeah, and we also we set up like a group chat for the league, which really helps move things along.
Absolutely. Do you have a group chat, Lauren?
We have like a little Twitter DM, but it's not like super active though. I mean, there are a couple people who have been, but no, not in general. It's not like a big mover.
Gotcha.
That's why we're still in the 27th round.
So, Justin,
that's not that bad. My wife's, I think, in round 19.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah. Wait, when did you finish? Like a couple days ago?
Yeah, I think we finished on Saturday. I think Saturday or Sunday.
I was gonna say like over the weekend.
Yeah.
So, how did TGFBI start? Like, how did you come up with the idea, Justin? And I guess talk a little bit about like the first year you did it and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the idea came up, and same with like the Barf League, which you've seen like now spawn into other area leagues. It was a similar rationale, and it was purely selfish. I think a lot of times people are like, "Oh, it's such an awesome thing you're doing for the community." The original intent was not that. It was I didn't think I was ever going to get into Out Wars or Labor, and I felt like I was a really good player. I played in like smaller industry leagues, like, this site's hosting a bunch of industry players, and I had won them, and I'd been like, okay, I think I'm just as good as anybody else in the industry, but I wanted a chance to prove that on a bigger stage. And there was only so many spots in Tout Wars. Back then, there was only like 3, maybe 4 Tout Wars leagues and only 2 or 3 labor leagues. And then and a lot of the people have been in that for 20 years, and they're not giving up their spots. So I was like, what's a way that I can show that I'm just as good as other people? And that's where the idea of Barf and then TGFBI kind of came from. And in my first year, I thought like, oh, if I can just get 3 leagues, if I can get 45 people to join in, like that's going to be amazing. And 195 people played in the first season. And so as much as like I do put a ton of work into it, it's kind of a labor of love. It wouldn't have gotten off the ground if not for a lot of people in the industry really embracing it. And now it's kind of become like this rallying thing in the industry that brings everybody together. And even now that I've gotten into Tout and Labor, it kind of does for other people what I'd hoped it would do for me, which is give other people an opportunity to show how good they are and put a spotlight on them, and also like validate some of like the industry studs. I mean, Todd Zola won it, Clay Link won it, like these guys who are obviously like, huge, like, pillars of our community. It's great to see them go out and crush it as well. But, like Kevin Hastings, like, I don't know that anybody knew who Kevin was. And then he goes out and wins the overall. Kenyatta Storin, has been the, number one player in the historical rankings for the last 3 years. And, has like 2,000 Twitter followers. Like, it just gives people an opportunity that might have 35 Twitter followers to get some recognition and to connect them with other people in the industry.
Yeah.
How many leagues were there this year?
There are 31 leagues, so 465 people.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So it's grown every single year, right?
Yeah. I mean,
are you ever going to cap it?
No, I don't think there's a reason to cap it. I do get everybody in who qualifies and applies on time in every year. The only reason people get rejected is if they don't qualify or if they just don't sign up on time. So my hope is that, one day it's 800, 1,000 people. I don't know if it'll ever be that. I don't know if there's that many people in the industry. In the last few years, I've started doing satellite leagues for people who aren't in the industry. It's a way to raise money for a charitable cause. But the winner of those satellite leagues get into next year's TGFBI. I just started filling up the 17th league for that. The nice thing about the lockout is I can continue filling up these satellite leagues. So you can still sign up for those over on TGFBI.com. I'll just keep filling them up until we have baseball. So, with that, it may grow more and more because I think we had 12 satellite winners in this year from that one leagues last year, and we'll have at least 17, probably closer to 25 when the things are all said and done, is my guess.
Do you have any future plans for it? Like, do you think you would change anything about it, or you think you'll just continuously be the same type of contest forever, basically?
I don't know. I mean, it's changed a little bit the first year. Like it was one catcher and we did 2 utils and there was trading. But since we moved to NFBC, they've got a little bit more, stringent requirements, right? They want us to, we need to follow their format. I kind of like it not changing because then it's more comparable year to year, right? Like, and Tout Wars used to do like a league that changed formats like every year. And I thought that was always really cool because then you got to see people playing a different format.
That is kind of cool.
It's hard to get 400 something people to
do that,
to want to do that every, this year I need, last year we played Roto, this year we're playing points, next year we're playing, So I mean, I wouldn't mind at some point expanding into other kind of leagues aside from it. Like maybe we do a TGFBI DFS contest on, aside from the actual TGFBI contest, or maybe we also do a head-to-head points or, different format with it. But I think the contest itself will probably stay the same.
Okay. So, last question on TGFBI. Have you ever won your league?
I have not.
That's awesome.
I've never finished like in the bottom half of my league. But every year something happens. Last year it was I spent early on saves because I don't like being left without saves and I don't want to foul them. So I made sure I used my 5th round pick on Trevor Rosenthal. I spent a 12th round pick on Archie Bradley because I thought he was going to get the job in Philadelphia. Got Jonathan Hernandez and Nick Wickren. And I'm like, I got 4 guys.
Brutal.
You're set.
And I spent $900 of my $1,000 chasing save. And ended up finishing in like 4th place, I think it was. With 24 saves. Like I probably would have at least competed for my league, if not won my league, had it not been for that. But it's the reason why this year, like I spent a 5th round pick on Aroldis Chapman, a 6th round pick on Will Smith. So if you're wondering what top closers are going to bust, it's probably those 2.
Great. That's good to know. All right. So we're going to move on to the main subject of this podcast, which is players to avoid. We're going to go by each position and we're each going to give one player and talk about why we're trying to avoid them. So we're going to start off with catcher, and actually we're going to start with you first, Lauren.
Oh, okay.
Who's your catcher to avoid?
So I've
catchers?
kind of just been avoiding Gary Sanchez in general.
Opposite.
Well, I saw that actually today. But that's good because you have a little discussion about it. But I mean, I get the Gary Sanchez, the whole power thing. I just, to me, it's hard to trust because it comes with a really bad batting average. And I know, for me, at least when I'm trying to draft catcher, I like to try and find catchers. If you can get like 250 batting average out of them, like, great, sign me up. And I know the batting average can be a little bit fluky, but I think you're starting to see a pattern with Gary Sanchez. It's like since 2017, he has like a 186 average and then a 232, 147, 204. So to me, that's just like way too low to kind of pair with a 20 homer, like 2025 power. I would rather, and it's not like I think we're talking about in terms of like 2 catcher leagues, because I think that if you're talking about a 1 catcher league, you don't really need to be drafting Gary Sanchez, I don't think. But, kind of looking at 2 catcher leagues, I would rather take kind of like a Yadier Molina, who's going a little bit later. Yes, you're going to lose some power, but you're going to get, some batting average there. And I know exactly what I'm getting with Yadier Molina. And I am buying into the narrative, this is his final season. So maybe there's a little oomph in his stats, which I can't quantify.
I think so.
I believe that.
I don't like technically like Gary Sanchez, but I think I actually have a lot of him because I focus so heavily on speed, where I feel like he is a decent late round catcher with power, like you said. Like, yeah, sure, the average could easily be 200. But I think the way I draft, I feel like my teams have been able to eat that average, and I could take on the power, which I need at that point in the draft. And he's going right now as the 17th catcher off the board at pick 272. So it's just late enough where it doesn't really matter for you know what I mean. I'm not too worried about it. All right, what about you, Justin? Who's your catcher, or any thoughts on Gary Sanchez?
I drafted Gary Sanchez in TGFBI. I've drafted him a couple other spots. I think if you're gonna draft someone like Gary Sanchez, you just have to have a really strong average base, and really need power, because and maybe that's one of the last guys you're filling out on your 23-man roster before you hit your reserves. And that was my situation. TGFBI is like I just needed some late power. I had some decent average to play with, but he could also just crush your batting average, like Lauren said. I like the Yadier Molina call because he has traditionally been kind of a horse in terms of plate appearances. We talk about guys like Sal Perez and Real Muto getting a lot of plate appearances. Well, Yadier Molina gets a lot of plate appearances and usually hits for a pretty decent average. And so while he may not hit
steals too,
and if it's his last year, there's no reason for them to like take it easy on him. Just let him go out and play as much as possible. He could legitimately get like 550 plate appearances this year. So yeah, I actually like that call on Yachty quite a bit. The guy, there's a number of catchers I'm fading. I'm not a big fan of Sal Perez at the price. I'm definitely fading Travis Darno. But now I'm blanking on. The guy I'm really fading is Christian Vasquez. The underlying skills and Statcast data on him are really, really ugly. And I know people are like, oh, you get stolen bases from a catcher, and he can't be as bad as he was last year as a hitter. It's like, yeah, he can, and I'm not really relying on my catcher to steal bases. Like if that is the only draw, then that is probably not a good thing, because he's not fast. He's an opportunistic base stealer, and if he's having a hard time getting on base because he can't hit anymore, I think that's a bad sign. So I know some people, like my co-host Paul Spora, loves Vasquez. He will not end up on any of my teams pretty much at any price. Like, go look at his Statcast profile and just see how ice cold blue everything is.
Yeah, I have him way down. You actually mentioned the catcher that I was going to say, which is Travis Darno, and I think the skill set's okay. I always, whenever I think of him, I think of how good he was in the playoffs in 2015. But The obvious issue is injuries. I mean, it's kind of like why I like Pena, who's his backup, because I feel like he's going to see a lot of at-bats. But I just brought up his injury history real quick. I mean, missed 102 games, 102 days last year, 6 days in 2020. He missed 11 in 2019, 174 in 2018, 22 in 2017, 57, 26. It just keeps going. He's missed 478 total days in 6 years. So, I mean, the guy can't stay healthy, and he's going as the 12th catcher off the board. I'd much rather have Elias Diaz. I'd rather take a shot on Kirk. I really like Sean Murphy. There's just a lot of guys after him I'd definitely prefer over him. So Travis Darno is mine.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, I had my backup catcher. And it's crazy because projections have him down for anywhere between like 430 and 540 plate appearances, but he's never had more than 400 plate appearances, once he's had it. But that was back in 2014, and so it's like I don't know what these projections are, what they're thinking. But yeah, you just can't rely, I think, on that injury. And I really do like the Manny Pena. I think he's a sneaky actually catcher play this season because Darno is going to go down at some point and he is going to be the backup. So I actually really like him this year.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I have him a lot of draft and holds. All right, let's move on to first base. We'll start with you, Justin. Who is your first base to avoid?
I mean, I think Vladdy's kind of the easy answer. Not because I think he's bad, but just because I just don't like taking a guy who's not going to steal really any bases in the first round. So because that's kind of an easy, cheap answer, I'll go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to talk about Alex Kiriloff. Kiriloff was one of those guys where I was like, coming at I do my first set of ranks before Labor Day. So, late August, early September of the previous season, because I don't want to be influenced by other people's ranks or projections. And because I'm not as smart as most people, so it takes me a lot longer to figure things out. And when I did my first run of ranks, I went, oh man, who I think is going to be like a really sneaky play for next year's Alex Kiriloff. He's going to be going outside of top 250 picks. Hopefully he'll be all healed up from the wrist surgery. There's no discount on him though. Everybody felt that way, and now he's like inside the top 200. We have no idea what the power is going to look like coming off that wrist surgery. I think he's a great long-term play. I just don't love the price this year. So, especially not having had any spring training games. We haven't gotten to see him at all. I'm just staying away from Alex Kiriloff.
Mm-hmm. The wrist injury kind of gets me. I don't really know what to think about it. And he's had it a couple times. So, and that really saps your power. I think you're right. Depending on, what his price is right now, it's just, you can probably find some safer guys, I think.
Yeah. Right now, Kiriloff is going as the 18th first baseman. He's going ahead of players like Rizzo, Mancini, Shoop, Belt. I'd much rather have Belt.
Ugh, why?
What do you mean why?
I'm a Giants fan. Like, dude is
I'm not gonna listen to you.
He's gonna platoon. He's gonna platoon, and he never stays healthy.
No, he's not.
This is the year he'll stay healthy. Trust me.
Why? Why would you think that?
He's gonna stay healthy?
It's gonna happen.
He's got a long history of concussion problems, back problems. Last year was hamstring problems from just rounding third base. Don't wrong. I love Brandon, and I hope I am wrong because I want the Giants to be good again. It was amazing.
You'd rather Kiriloff over him, though?
I don't want.
I feel like Belt. Okay, well, I'd much rather Belt over him.
I think I would go Kiriloff.
I think he's got a lot. He has the power.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to do this, Justin.
Give me Nathaniel Lowe or Frank Schwindel.
Why would you want Lowe? That speed is not going to stick.
I don't need it to stick. He actually made some real changes to his swing last year.
You need the speed
which helped him get around on high fastballs, which is what he struggled with. I think he had like a 90-something% zone contact percentage. I don't need the speed to stick. What I need him to do is raise his launch angle, because if he raises his launch angle, he could have like a Vladdy type breakout.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
A Vladdy type breakout.
Like
you good. I mean, he's got exit velocity. He's got contact. All he needs to do is raise his launch angle to
together
just below league average. It doesn't. I mean, I think his launch angle was like under 3 last year. Like if he just raises it to like 12 degrees, like he's gonna have a massive year.
Easier said than done, though, right?
It is. I'm. This is why he's going super, super late. But
I get it. No, I get it.
He was a guy everybody went crazy for in Fab the year he came up, and now like people are just ignoring the fact that he made real changes to his swing and approach, and they paid off. Like, and I think there is a real chance he could have a breakout season.
You got Curlin chiming in here. A raise of launch angle could create holes in his swing and drop the batting average.
This is true.
I mean, again, we're also talking about players who are going, really late. All right, Lauren, who's your first baseman?
So I'm going to go a little less late, and this is Jared Walsh, and it's not, and it's just this is strictly an ADP kind of fade for me, as opposed to just fading Jared Walsh. But to me, it really comes down to his splits. And versus lefties, he hit 170 batting average last season, and I don't think that that's necessarily going to cost him playing time, but he's got a cushy spot right now. I think according to Roster Resource, he's sitting in between Trout and Rendon, and I don't know. I just think that if he continues, if he can't kind of just pick it up a little bit against lefties, I think it could just move him down the lineup a little bit. And, to me, I guess I'd ask you guys this. This is something that, I get that he, you can say, well, he's bad against lefties, but he really bashes righties, to the tune of 333, right? And this is, at the end of the day, probably a 30, home run hitter, right? But, he's going ahead of guys that I would happily take later who I have less concerns about. CJ Cron, Bell, Votto. And I would take those guys ahead of him. So to me, it's just a little bit more of a matter of he's just going a little bit too high for me. I have too much concern at that point. He's going as the ninth first baseman off the board. But I don't know. Do you think that's too much? I'm waiting too much on the splits there.
Maybe, but maybe not. I mean, like he was atrocious last year against lefties. I will say he did have a 176 BABIP against him. He also had like a 400 BABIP against righties. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle for both of them, especially because he hit 10 home runs against lefties last year. So it wasn't like, while it was bad, it wasn't popless. And right now, they don't have anybody they can platoon with him. Now, that could change. The Angels have shown they're willing to spend money. It wouldn't take very much to go get a lefty masher to platoon with them. I think we'll know once free agency opens back up whether or not he's in danger of losing playing time. I have him behind all those guys too. So I actually agree with you. And I doubt he ends up on any of my teams rest of the way, but I don't, the way the team's currently constructed right now, especially like in the upper minors and on the team, like I don't think there's anybody that's really threatening that spot, but it's really easy for them to address as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's basically a power play, but you have other first basemen going later than him that have basically proven more power than him as of, so
and it's
far.
Such a deep position.
And I mean, he's coming off that bad second half too. So, like kind of like you said, I think there's a little more to worry about him compared to the people behind him. And it's more of an ADP thing.
It also may just be a matter of he needs more time, right? Because I think people forget he was a pitcher in the minor leagues. Like he was splitting time during his development between pitching and hitting. And so he just may not have the amount of at-bats a normal guy his age would have under his belt. So it just may be a matter of like he needs more at-bats against lefties before he starts to get better. Yeah. And if the Angels don't pick someone else up, it looks like they're going to give him that opportunity. Now, you have to succeed, right? The Angels are a team that wants to win.
They want to win, yeah.
And so they're not going to let him hit under 200 against lefties and keep going out there. So I think he definitely has to improve. Otherwise, he will be at risk at some point, probably early in the season, on being platooned.
Yeah, and someone's chiming in too, saying those counting stats could be huge with a healthy Trout and Rendon. That's a big if, though. It's a big.
I also think that they are probably the front runner for Story. There's a natural hole right there at shortstop.
Yeah. Yep. Kind of like Lauren, I kind of went based off ADP here, and mine is Matt Olson. I've heard other people kind of discuss him as well, and a lot of people discuss him just because, again, first base, you can find a lot of power late. But I kind of want to bring up Pete Alonso. Alonso's going after him, and I think Alonso has a pretty solid chance of outproducing him. I think Alonso's batting average is really gonna take another step forward, just based on his plate discipline and everything he improved last season. And I usually am very down on Mets players, and he is like the one player that I'm really starting to come around on. And I think why grab Matt Olson when you could grab Alonso like around later?
Yeah, I tend to agree there, and I think
or even the later power goes.
Olson's price is going to go even higher once he gets traded, because we all assume he's going to get traded. But he's also a guy, like, his power plays fine anywhere. Like, I don't think his counting stats would be better because of a better team around him. But like, he's not going to get like 5 or 10 more home runs moving to a different park just because Oakland sucks to hit him. He murders the ball anywhere he goes. So he's a little bit overpriced for me right now, and will be very overpriced once he gets moved.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on to second base. We'll start with you, Lauren, who is a player to avoid at second base.
Well, I want to bring Max Muncy up just because I have been avoiding him. And now he's kind of, you're seeing a little bit more buzziness around Muncy because the season's delayed. And, people are saying this is a player who could benefit from the delayed season. For listeners, if they don't know, he tore his UCL, I think on the last day of the season last year, and he chose rest over surgery. And he just, I think it was this week or last week, he came out and said that, he just started swinging the bat and he should be ready for opening day. And I don't know. I've been fading him. Like I said, he's not, right now, he's he plays first and second base. He's going as like the 17th first baseman off the board, and then the 21st second baseman. So, the price is low for him. I still am fading right now, but I could be interested in not fading. And I know we're talking about, avoids, but have you guys been avoiding, and are you changing your minds on that at this point?
Nah, I'm with Justin. I'm avoiding and not changing my mind at all.
Sticking with the avoid. Okay.
I'm just never gonna be able to get him at a place I'd be willing to take a shot on. I think if you're playing in a 10 or 12 team league and you can get him kind of in your last few rounds, sure, why not? Right? You take the gamble. Yeah. Worst case scenario, you drop him, you move on to the next guy. But like Nick Savali had a nice little thread, I think, earlier today about it, like saying, like, yes, he might be like fine in the field, but he really worries about that elbow with a left-handed swing, and that he's afraid that they're going to find out in June that he really needs to get the Tommy John surgery. So, and I just think, especially if you're playing in a deeper format, most 12s and definitely 15s or deeper, I just think there's not enough replacement value on the waiver wire to take a shot like that. If you're playing in a shallow league, especially if you have a lot of IL spots, I think it's fine. If you're not playing on an FBC, I think it's fine. But for me, in the leagues I play in, it's just a straight avoid. He's never going to go in the 25th or later round in a 15-teamer, which is where I'd be willing to take a shot on him.
Yeah. There'll always be someone there who loves him and will just take him anyway. Yeah. Who's your second baseman, Justin?
My second baseman's Brennan Rogers. And I think there's this like push, like, hey, Brennan Rogers, look, he's healthy. He's finally playing. Like healthy, comparatively speaking, to Brennan Rogers. He played 102 games last year. He, 415 plate appearances, which is amazing for him. Not amazing for most players. He doesn't run. He hasn't stolen a base since 2018 in Double-A. Hasn't even attempted a stolen base since then. All he is like an injury-prone version of Ty France. So just go get Ty France, who's got double eligibility and not injury-prone. I just don't understand. This is another one that me and Paul argue about all the time because he loves Brennan Rodgers. It's just like he has never put up a season in the majors or the minors with 500 plate appearances, and all the projection systems have him for like 530, 580 plate appearances. Like, I don't know how you can project him to do something he's never done. And they all has him for like a few stolen bases. Again, he stopped running probably to keep himself healthy. I think this is just a matter of prospect pedigree influencing people's decision, thinking that at some point he's going to unlock why he was like, I think the first or third overall pick many years ago. And I don't see it.
Yeah. My second baseman, Lauren, took mine, who was going to be Muncy. I'm also not a fan of Jazz Chisholm, though. I just think the strikeout rate, and I don't know. I don't think I think there's a little too low a floor there for me. But I do want to bring up real quick because you had Torres takes right on your podcast, and he said that he likes Kiki Hernandez, and you said you didn't. I fully agree with Torres takes. You need to look into Kiki Hernandez more, Justin. Because
I just
saw his name here, and I was like, you know what? Really good second half. I fully agree. I think he's going to lead off. It doesn't matter. The manager loves him there. I have a lot of shares of him.
Yeah, I actually did a little bit deeper dive last night because of Chris saying that. I'm buying back in a little bit. I was super high on him in those initial ranks in September and stuff like that. I think I got him in our AFL league. And then I kind of backpedaled a little bit. It was like, the numbers really aren't that amazing. But if he can lead off all season next year, or this year in Boston, he could just be a run scored machine. He's multi-positional eligible. I think you guys are right. I think I've just been sleeping a little bit too much on Kiki Hernandez.
Yeah, I was happy when he brought him up because he was someone who's really popped up in my draft prep every time. I feel like he's ranked very high on my sheet. I
really like talking to him. He was a lot of fun to have on, and I'm glad I asked him to come on because he was a great interview.
His videos are amazing.
They're fantastic.
Someone needs to hire that guy.
That's what I said. Someone pay the man. Just pay the man.
Yep. All right, let's move on to shortstop. Lauren, who's your shortstop to avoid?
It's Corey Seager. This is kind of easy. I know, he's going within the top 100. And for me, it doesn't really have to do with the move to Texas. It's just that lack of speed. He has a little bit of an injury history as well, but it's mostly the lack of speed. This is a position that is deep. It's a position where there's a lot of guys that steal bases. So for me, I'm out on Corey Seager. And it's the same thing as with the Carlos Correa, and those two are going, back to back in the drafts, but it's kind of a very similar profile. And I don't really have an interest in that.
Yeah, they're going Seager's the 14th shortstop off the board, and Correa is the 15th off the board. I kind of went with a boring pick as well. I went with Marcus Simeon, which a lot of people, were talking about and kind of agreeing with me there that, he's kind of being overdrafted. But as of late, he's starting to kind of come down a little now to, I think, territory where maybe he is draftable. But, I just have the same concerns as everyone going to pitcher's ballpark, bad lineup around him. I think he really benefited from, playing in Buffalo in terms of power and all that stuff. So I just don't know if he's going to put out what he did last year, especially in terms of, runs and RBIs. So we'll see. I think too, I don't know. I'd rather take a shot on Lindor than him. But that's my opinion. Who is your shortstop, Justin?
Yeah, my shortstop's the same as Lauren's. It's both Seager and Correa. Okay. Seager finished as the 29th shortstop last year, and he's now being drafted as, I think, the 12th or something like that.
15th,
yeah. 12th over the last 3 weeks, it looks like. So, which is insane. He's moving to a worse park. He's moving, which I don't think the park will really affect him nearly as much, but a much worse lineup. Dude has had a real trouble staying on the field. And he does not run. And same with Correa, does not run. We have no idea where he's going to be. I think Correa ends up back in Houston, but Correa, like, even in a career year, right? It was a career year last year. We keep hearing career year for Carlos Correa last year. Finishes the 9th shortstop. Like, who cares? Like, I mean, like, and just dude has had trouble staying on the field almost his entire career, and now we say he needs like 600 plus plate appearances to just get inside the top 10 at shortstop. I want a guy who I feel like is going to be a top 5 shortstop potentially, especially with how deep that position is. I don't want a guy whose ceiling is 9th. Like, that just doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
I think you bring up a good point. So I feel like shortstop and even second base, they're really the best positions to get speed, and because there's a lot of it, and you know, and not just empty speed. And I think that's why guys like Correa or Seager, like, if you're not getting a lot of speed from them, they could have these really good seasons and not really produce top 5 value, because everyone else around them is doing a little bit of everything, like, you know, like a Polanco or even a Baez, and it's just like, how can they pass them in terms of value when there's just no stolen bases there?
Yeah.
So that was a good point, Justin. All right, let's move on to third base. Who's your third baseman to avoid, Lauren?
It's Yoan Moncada. I don't know. I just don't really get Yoan Moncada. I don't know sometimes like actually what I'm getting from him. I think that he's more of a 15 to 20 home run bat than, you know, a 25 home run bat. You know, I kind of just look at him and I think that 2019 is an outlier year, especially in power. And, you know, batting average to a certain extent. You know, it's when he went 25-10 and a 315 batting average. You know, for me, he's going ahead of, he's going like kind of right with Ryan McMahon, kind of Justin Turner. I would take both those guys over Moncada. To me, and this may be unfair, but to me, Moncada is kind of like a slightly better version of Heimer Candelario. And, you know, Candelario won't give you the steals. But I think you're kind of on par in a lot of the other categories. And I would rather just, I'm fine with, you know, Heimer Candelario going 50 picks later. That's where I would take someone with that profile. And to me, that's, I just put Moncada down in that profile a little bit more. So, yeah, it's Moncada for me.
Yeah. Just take Josh Donaldson anyway.
I would take Donaldson happily over Moncada.
Yeah, no, I like the Turner call too.
You know,
I have Turner really high.
Yeah, me too.
I think he's super underrated.
Always,
he's so
every
good.
year.
As long as he's on the field, he's amazing.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you have someone you can slot in, because he's probably going to only play 450 plate appearances. So
yeah, he'll miss some, but he will get I think a little extra oomph with the DH though. So
they have so many guys.
I know they like to do that, but
maybe they'll throw him in there a couple times. You know,
especially if Muncy, if they're trying to protect Muncy, like especially early. So plus AJ Pollock's always injured, so they're going to probably want to protect him. They're going to get Will Smith extra at bats, like
that's true.
Everyone.
Yeah, so
you get a DH, you get a DH.
All right, Justin, who is your third baseman?
My third baseman is Kris Bryant. He was really, really bad in the second half last year, and I know this because I am a Giants fan and I had to watch his sorry ass play. The only thing that salvaged his value is he stole 6 bases in the second half, which I don't know I don't think that's repeatable for him. Like, I don't think he's going to become a 12 or 15 stolen base guy. We have no idea where he's playing. I think Park is going to play a big influence on where his value is. And so if you're drafting right now or until the lockout ends, you know, maybe it ends tomorrow and we know, but you know, if he ends up in Colorado, like the rumor was going around for a little while, that's great. I retract what I say then, but I don't know that he's going to. And like, if he ends up in a bad park, like the Mets had been talking about wanting Kris Bryant, like that would be, I think, atrocious for him and his fantasy value. So I'm just staying away. Injury history too. His guys had back issues in the past, so I'm just kind of avoiding Kris Bryant.
All right. So I picked Mondesi, but I feel like that's kind of boring. What about? I was thinking about Matt Chapman. I know he's going decently late, but what is the difference right now between Matt Chapman and Joey Gallo? Like, he's Chapman, I feel like, is even less power, and his batting average at this point is just sticking around 200. So he's just like, how can you make up for his batting average if he's in your lineup? And like all he's giving you is power. I just think that he could continue to stick to a low 200 average and just continue to hurt your team, and you're not going to be able to make that up with your other draft picks.
I would much rather, normally I don't like draft Gallo. Like I have to like kind of plan for it, but I did take him in TGFBI this year, and I think there's a significant difference. Like I think there's much more power with Gallo. I think that you can get kind of better counting stats with him. He throws in a couple more steals, but yeah, I mean the batting average is the same, but I do think that he's a little bit more inflated, and I think in the other 4 categories, I think.
No, yeah. I mean, I think Gallo's better, but well, probably. I mean, at least power output, but I just think that people don't go near Gallo because
I see. Okay,
batting average is so low. And I think sometimes people forget that Chapman also, his batting average has really tanked the past couple seasons, and he's just really, really he's got power, and like the rest, like I think that average is getting to a point where it's too hard to make up for, like Gallo, where it's just very, very hard to build your team around him. And I'm still kind of surprised that people are still kind of like buying into him a little bit as their starter.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it also has to do with the position's really shallow. I don't,
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but you got Eugenio Suarez and Josh Donaldson going behind. Like when you said that, I was like getting ready. I was getting ready to be like, "Oh no, I'm going to refute this." But you take a look at the underlying stats, and you're like, "Oh no, he had like a 71% zone contact percentage from August on. Like he got worse as the season went on. So you can't even blame it for like the injuries he was coming off of coming into the season." I hope, I want him to be better. Like I do, because he's a really fun player to watch, especially defensively. Maybe it's a matter of like, he just saw where the ship was going and just stopped caring. Didn't care too. Like, I don't know, but I tend to agree with you. I've not drafted Matt Chapman at all this year. I probably won't. As much as everybody says like the position's shallow, I don't think the position's shallow. There's just not as much elite talent at the position. I mean, when we're talking about, guys like, being able to get guys like Eugenio Suarez or Abraham Toro or Gio Urshela, like, I don't think it's necessarily super shallow. I just think you just don't have like the elite stars we used to get at third base that we became accustomed to.
I think it becomes a tough pill to swallow too when it comes to any of those guys being your starter. I think there's fewer starter-worthy third basemen than other positions. But I get what you're saying. Like there are good late round values though still that could easily, but I mean, like, really good.
Who cares if your third base position is weak as opposed to it being your UT position that's weak? Like, I think we overrate, like, I want a good starter at my third. It's still a position that's playing every day for you. Like,
well, I guess because UT is easier to, to swap players with and
guys emerge. Guys emerge. Like, there'll be somebody who's this year's Austin Riley. A guy that we overlooked. It'll probably be Suarez or someone like that. I just think we overrate like the depth of positions, especially because everybody does draft champions early, and we get so used to playing in those leagues with 50 rounds, and then third base gets really ugly. But like if you're playing in a 12-team league, like the position's fine. Like I don't think it's anything to worry about.
All right, let's move on to outfield. Lauren, who is your outfielder to avoid, and why is it Cedric Mullins?
It is not Cedric Mullins. It's Byron Buckstead. This is someone who like I avoid every year, like the plague.
This is the year, Lauren.
I know you think this is the year. Have you gotten shares?
I have not.
Well, talk to me when you've gotten shares. But I mean, the thing is, because he goes so early. It's like he's the 15th outfielder off the board right now. He has an ADP of 52. I get the power speed upside. I get all of what Buxton brings to the table. It's just that injury risk that is very long. It's very risky, especially for me at that price. And talking about kind of shallow positions, I think, everyone does talk about third base, but outfield kind of sneakily just drops off after a certain point. And I think that if you're in if you're in a league that has you have to have 5 outfield positions filled, that can be difficult to do, and I just don't want to use one of those positions on Byron Buxton.
Yeah, I mean, I have no reason for it. I just have a gut feeling that this is the year, and I have 0 shares.
I thought it was like
I'll be missing out on it too.
It's always
like working out or something.
No. The problem is I never say that ever about him.
Yeah, but there's everyone is always like, maybe not you, but like, yeah, there's always someone. Yeah, there'll be a year. There'll be a year where and it may be this year because he signed that contract. He probably undersold himself. And it may be this year, but like I just don't know how you bet on it. Like, we should be getting a discount on Byron Buxton. We're not. We're still paying what, a top 50 or pretty close to a top 50 price on Byron Buxton. Like, I don't understand why we're doing this to ourselves. Like, he missed like half the season, and we're still paying the same price or even a more expensive price than we did last year. Like, I don't like. I'm with Lauren. I'm completely fading Byron Buxton at the price.
But I do think it is interesting though that the Twins did sign him to like that. It was like 7-year, $100 million contract, which, if anything did give me pause, I would just be like, well, maybe the like I don't. But see, they don't. I mean, they don't know. I don't know. It's just a head scratcher for me. I don't get it.
Yeah, like maybe they know something.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe they do.
He's going to be healthy. Actually,
they're like, this is the year as well. They feel it.
Yeah,
that's a lot of time to give him for that history. I feel like
after their Alex Colomé deal last year, I don't think I trust the Minnesota front office.
Yeah, that's true.
No, that's
good point.
Doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
All right, Justin, who's your outfielder?
Outfield's hard. I actually like a lot of the outfielders this year, and I don't mind a lot of the prices. But I'll put on my Giants homerism a little bit right now and say that Cody Ballinger is my fade. I think people are still they're looking at what he did in the playoffs, and they're like, oh, look, he started to turn it around. He had a 500 BABIP in the playoffs. And the entire time he was in the playoffs, he had 1 home run. Like, so what? He hit 353. It was a 500 BABIP. And if you watch those games, a lot of it was like dribblers through the infield or, pop flies that guys just, didn't get to in the outfield. Like, it wasn't like he was hitting the ball hard. He still seemed lost to play. I think the shoulder is still an issue for him. Even before the shoulder became an issue for him, he reworked his swing after an MVP season. I just... don't get me wrong, at the price, yes, could he be one of those guys who's a quote-unquote league winner? Maybe, I mean, he's obviously a guy who's turned in first-round value before. I don't know that I trust it. And there's so many guys in the outfield that are really, really interesting that a guy with those kind of red flags is not someone that I'm going to be putting that kind of pick on.
I feel like you have to watch out for those tinkerers. It's like, and especially when he's coming off like his best season, he's like, why mess with it? Just roll with it.
Well, it's because that season he just had an insanely good first half, and then I remember the second half he was tailing off big time. I think that's why I tried to change his swing, but he literally has done it for, in my opinion, he's basically been good for 1/2 of a baseball season, and people just keep hoping that it's going to come back, and it blows my mind. I have 0 shares. I had 0 shares last year. I don't know, but go ahead, take them, man. My outfielder is Starling Marte. And it's just because of the steals. I mean, he had a ridiculous run last year. I know because I had him on one of my teams, and I felt like every single day I looked, he was stealing a base. It was insane. But I mean, he's only getting older. He moves to the Mets. They have a pretty good lineup, and I don't think they're going to need him to steal. and steals can fluctuate. He doesn't really have power. I mean, he's got the batting average, but I think if those steals really start to take more of a backseat, then he's not going to be nearly as valuable as his ADP.
Yeah.
So that's my pick, unfortunately, as a Mets fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people forget like how little Buck Showalter let the Orioles steal. Like, I mean, he had a season where the entire Orioles stole 19 bases as a team.
Yeah,
and the last 4 years he was the coach there, they stole less than Starling Marte stole last year. So every year they had less than 47 stolen bases in the last 4 years of Buck Showalter with the Orioles. Now, they didn't have a team that necessarily was built to run, but they had like Adam Jones in his prime and Machado when he was running, and like they had guys who could, Brian Roberts, like they had guys who could steal, but they just did not steal at all. And maybe they steal a little bit more than he did back then, but I don't think he's going to like give everybody a green light. So
no, it's just like, why? I mean, if he gets on base and he's got Lindor and Alonso behind him, it doesn't make sense to really risk him getting thrown out. Because
wait, how many steals do you think he'd get? Like ballpark? We like 30 or like?
I'd say 25.
25.
Yeah, I was going to say in the 20s. Projections have him in the 30s, low 30s. Okay. But I would guess 25, like 2019.
How many plate appearances do they have him though? Because
604.
My concern too with Marte, and I've been a huge Marte guy,
which he hasn't done since 2018.
Yeah, he gets hit by pitches a lot, and he also throws his body around the outfield, and so he typically doesn't play a full season. So like if he's only playing like 130 games, well, 130 games might be a full season this year, but like I think it seems pretty high for him to get back to 30 stolen bases. He can, but I just don't know that I buy that, and I'm not going to pay a second round price for it.
And I mean, it's crazy how erratic steals really are. I mean, he's stolen 47 before, and the next season he only stole 21. So it's just, you don't really know. All right, let's move on to starting pitching. Lauren, who is your starter to avoid?
Kevin Gausman is, I think that I don't love the move back to the AL East. But I mean, I think that he is a better pitcher than what he was, when he was in Baltimore. He's made, improvements in, his overall contact rates, and his swinging strike rate has improved every year since 2016. So it's not that he's not the same pitcher, but, I just don't like the move to the AL East. I think that, we're seeing an elevated price right now because he's coming off, a really great season. And really it's less about him, and kind of more about, I think there are a ton of interesting arms that are behind him that just kind of intrigue me a little bit more, and I have less concerns about. So I've been fading him when I've kind of been around that point with him. So I've drafted other guys instead.
Yeah, I've just never been that into him, just because the whole splitter thing. I know he obviously has been very good with it, but I don't know. There's just something about him that I just
can't get on board.
Can't get on board with him. Yeah. I mean, Justin, you have full faith in him after seeing him all last season?
I mean, I think anytime you're pitching in the AL East, that's scary, right? And he's moving out of that Oracle Park. I'm not as scared as a lot of other people, though. Like Lauren said, he's a different guy than he was when he pitched in Baltimore before.
Oh, yeah.
And that Toronto park is actually, plays as a pitcher's park, especially with the humidor there. So I think the bigger issue isn't so much the park or the division, it's that he's going to be pitching on that turf. And I could see him kind of have a higher than, his BABIP be higher a little bit because the balls move so fast there. So I haven't ended up with him, but I'm not opposed to drafting him if he falls. The problem is like his prices put him as like, borderline SP1 or definitely an SP2. And I've got him more kind of back end of the SP2s, SP3s. And so it's unlikely I get Gausman, but I don't think he's going to be bad. I just don't think he's going to be as elite as he was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who's your pitcher?
Oh man, there's a number of guys I could have gone with, but I think Justin Verlander, man, I just don't understand it. Like everybody is putting his. I've seen people put him inside their top 20 starting pitchers. People who I really, really respect in the industry, including like my co-host Paul Sporer. Like, we haven't seen him pitch in forever.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a clause in his contract that triggers an option after he throws 130 innings, which means that's what he and his agent felt comfortable him throwing this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to take a guy as my SP2, I want to feel pretty damn comfortable I'm going to get 180 innings, not 130 innings. And he's also, like, prior to getting hurt, he was changing his mechanics. So that way he could, like, change his, give himself a chance of pitching until his, like, mid-40s. So we don't even know yet what his mechanics look like. Is he going to go back to his original mechanics? Is he going to try to use the mechanics that he was working on prior to the Tommy John surgery? Like, there's just so many questions to take a guy that early. Like, I've got him outside of my top 50 starting pitchers. And some people are wanting to take him, like, in the first 4 rounds of a draft. Like, I just don't understand that.
Yeah.
Yep, fully with you. Yeah, he's outside my top 50 starting pitchers as well, I think. Just all those guys. I mean, Verlander more so, obviously, because he's going so high. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we have literally no idea what we're getting with him.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a coin flip with him.
Mm-hmm.
I could have went with a bunch of pitchers as well. I decided to go with someone I haven't talked that much about. I'm not a fan of Ian Anderson. He's going at 157. I think a lot of people are in love, and I don't know why. Everyone thinks that his breaking ball, I think it's the changeup, is better than it really is. I was skeptical going into last year too, and I think he's okay. In terms of, like, ratios, I think he'll be okay. But I just think that's a lot of people really think that the strikeouts are going to come still, and I just don't really see it in his arsenal. I don't think it's really going to come. And I'd rather take other pitchers after him. Like, I really like Sonny Gray, which I've consistently talked about. I feel like, we just saw Marcus Stroman do what you want Ian Anderson kind of to do. He's going after him. I'd rather Jordan Montgomery, Patrick Sandoval. I'd rather these high strikeout potential guys that are going after him than Ian Anderson, just because I just don't see strikeouts coming with him. And I feel like Justin is searching him right now as he's looking on his other screen.
Yeah, I'm kind of ambivalent on Ian Anderson. Like, I think there is some talent there. I do think there's strikeout upside. He's also been kind of nicked up. Like, wasn't he dealing with a shoulder issue, I think, last year at some point? I don't know.
And on him even less.
Yeah. I don't love that park for righties.
Yeah.
And I think, the division's only going to get stronger as the Mets get better and the DH is added. Like, I'm not necessarily opposed to drafting him, but he's definitely not a guy I'm targeting. I just have a hard time getting a read on him. And I think
the ratios are going to be okay. Like, the ratios, yeah, I get it. But again, I don't know. I don't know how anyone sees strikeouts there. I don't know. I can't get on. What were you going to say?
He does have a really good changeup. The problem is his curveball is really bad. Like, I think he needs to figure out a different third pitch. But yeah, he doesn't give up a ton of hard contact. I don't know that with a 50% ground ball rate, like, he's ever going to be a guy who, like, jumps up into, like, the 26% strikeout rate. But, like, I think he's fine where he's going. He's just not. There's guys who go after him that I like a little bit more, and so I don't think I end up with him very often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Like, I'd rather take a shot on a Sandoval or a Montgomery or something that has that strikeout potential. Or you don't like Montgomery, do you?
No, Sandoval.
Oh, okay.
It's like I love the skills. Like, I really do. I was in on him last year. I kind of followed the crowd. I wasn't driving that bandwagon, but I definitely, like, followed Nick Pollock and people who were singing his praises. But he ended the season with a stress fracture in his back. Like, and people are paying like he's going to be ready to go. He's in a 6-man rotation.
I think I found something or saw something that he is good to go.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Don't trust it though.
He's been a guy who's struggled to stay on the field, and the Angels' track record with pitcher injuries is probably the worst in baseball, and that's saying something because you're a Mets fan, right? But like, when was the last time we had an Angels pitcher who was good and stayed healthy? Like C.J. Wilson?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Like, I mean, and I love like some of the Angels pitchers we've seen.
What do you mean, Andrew Heaney? Come on.
Exactly. I'm an Andrew Heaney stan, but like, there's something about that team. Like, I just don't trust their training staff at all. Coming off of a back injury, like, and I could be dead wrong because, like I said, I love the skills on Patrick Sandoval. I just don't understand why we're drafting him as early as we are, considering the injury that he's coming off of, and that like, I want to see a guy finish the year on the field. Like, that's I hate seeing that a guy did not return.
Yeah.
Because we have and we have no idea. Like, he hasn't been working with their training staff. Maybe that's a good thing. But because of the lockout, like, we have no idea where his rehab's at. Like, we have no idea, like, does he have like more issues? So I want to see him pitch. If he comes out in whatever spring training we get and he looks good, then yeah, I'll jump on board with everybody else. But he's one of those guys that I'm just not going to touch until I see it.
He'll look good. Don't worry, Justin.
I hope so.
Don't
I think he's a really, really interesting pitcher. And I mean, the 6-man rotation does scare me a little bit, but I think a lot of teams are going to have 6-man rotations this year.
Yeah, and they usually never hold. Yeah. All right, Lauren, who is your RP?
My RP is Giovanni Gallegos. And it just comes down to, I think that everyone thinks he has the role set, the closer role locked, but he doesn't. And as much as I think that as fans, you want to see that, or you think that makes sense, you have to listen to what, the GM says, what the coach says. And as of, recently, they say he does not have that role locked up yet. Has an ADP of 85, and that's a pretty hefty price to pay for someone who we don't know. We know that he doesn't have the role locked up yet. So
yeah, he was mine, and I remember Justin, you were there at first pitch. We did the draft, and Paul took him like super early. And everyone was like looking at each other like, what just happened? We were shocked.
he took him in front of Raciel Iglesias.
That's crazy.
In the third round.
I mean, to his credit, it was October and the season just ended, so like no one really, had too much research done. But
no, him and I on the live podcast at first pitch, I yelled at him for this, and we took a poll of the room, and like nobody was like in favor of this. Like this was a bad move from the get go on Gallegos. He's not the closer. The team prefers to have a guy with his skill set come in situations that are dangerous for the team. That's usually not the 9th. It's in the middle of the 7th or the middle of the 8th. When, whatever starting pitcher or reliever has let 2 men on, like that's where they want him. They don't want him coming in when the bases are clear at the bottom of the 9th. He'll get saves, but like, I don't know that anybody is going to end up being like the quote unquote guy in St. Louis. And if there is one, he is not on the team yet. My bold prediction of like a week or so ago was that Ian Kennedy leaves the Cardinals and saves. So
I like that because I have several Kennedy shares.
Me too.
Yeah.
So good pick, Lauren. That was mine as well. Who was yours, Justin?
David Bednar. This is another situation where everybody looks at the skills and goes, this guy is going to be an amazing closer. And you know what? He might be, but it won't be on the Pirates, who really, really care about keeping guys' arbitration numbers down. They've got a cost-controlled guy in Chris Stratton. And he was the guy they turned to in the 9th down the stretch last year. I think this is probably a shared job between the two. And yes, Bednar is the much better pitcher, but like, do you really want a guy like Bednar who's going to share the role in Pittsburgh, a team that's probably going to win 60 games again? I just don't understand why people are taking Bednar as early as they are. I got Chris Stratton like in the 28th or 29th round of TGFBI, and he'll probably lead that team in saves.
Yeah, you're Stratton, right? You like love Stratton, don't you?
Yeah, he was a guy that I was years ago was talking about like that he was a guy going like outside the top 500 picks when he was a Giant, and like all of a sudden like people started drafting and I'm like no, like you don't want to draft him in like a 30-round league, but all of a sudden people, and so I got a Roto-Rare shirt that says, remember when Justin Mason said Chris Stratton would be an ace? So
it's amazing. It's amazing. All right, that wraps it up. Before we go, Justin, just tell everyone where they can find you, and if you got anything cool coming out soon or what you've been up to.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB. You can read pretty much all my work right now is over on Fangraphs, where I'm writing 5 days a week. Also on the Sleeper and the Bus podcast, TGFBI podcast, and the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. And I think that's about it. Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot. I'm gonna post my article for tomorrow on Fangraphs, and I'm going to bed early tonight.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I should have been in bed like an hour and a half ago. But, all right. Well, thanks for coming on, Justin. You can follow me on Twitter at SPStreamer. You can follow Lauren on Twitter at LK Auerbach. If you enjoy the show, please rate and subscribe to us on whatever platform you're listening to. I know there is no season announced yet, but we do have our draft kit out, so make sure you check it out in our shop as well as our membership, which includes Discord chat and a bunch of other benefits as well. We will be back next week, I think on Wednesday, with Matt Williams and around 7 p.m. Eastern. So looking forward to that, and we'll talk to you guys then. Thanks for listening.